I keep finding voices in my mind that say,
March 2025. Linda Mudzenda had just stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage. Soft-spoken, humble, no one expected what was coming. The judges smiled politely until the music started. But behind that voice, and is a story the show never told you. A story about heartbreak, silent battles, and a twist that might change how you see her performance forever. When Linda Mudzenda stepped onto the Britain's Got Talent stage, she wasn't accompanied by flashy lights, a dramatic backstory video, or the usual fanfare that sometimes signals the arrival of a pre-packaged favorite. She appeared humble, soft-spoken, and unassuming, the kind of contestant viewers might not expect to leave a lasting impression. The judges gave polite smiles, the audience was still, and anticipation hovered in the air like fog before a storm. But the moment Linda opened her mouth and began to perform, everything changed. It was one of those rare, goosebump-raising moments when a performer's raw talent slices through the noise of television spectacle and lands directly in the hearts of everyone watching. Her voice, rich, soulful, and hauntingly emotive, had the kind of power that doesn't need frills. The audience, initially uncertain, began to rise to their feet. Gasps could be heard. A hush fell over the auditorium, the kind that only occurs when something real is happening, something unscripted. And when she hit her final note, there was a beat of silence before the room erupted in applause and cheers. Even Simon Cowell, who is notoriously hard to impress, looked visibly moved. Amanda Holden had tears in her eyes. It wasn't just about the vocals, though they were undeniably special. It was the emotional energy Linda brought to that moment. It was as if she had been waiting her entire life for the chance to be seen, and now, with one song, she had arrived. Viewers at home quickly took to social media, posting clips, writing heartfelt comments, and calling her performance one of the season's most memorable. But what most people didn't realize, what the cameras didn't quite capture, was just how much Linda had gone through to get to that moment. For the audience, it was a performance. For Linda, it was a breakthrough. It was the unveiling of a story the show never fully told. The producers showed us the standing ovation, the judges' awe, and the edited sound bites. But there was so much more happening behind that audition. Linda's journey to the stage, the years of waiting, the personal struggles, and even the quiet defiance she carried with her, none of that made it into the primetime slot. But it should have, because what Britain's Got Talent didn't tell you about Linda Mudzenda is that her audition wasn't just a performance, and it was a declaration. As the applause subsided and the judges continued to shower Linda with praise, something stirred within the room, a quiet acknowledgement that there was so much more to her than what had just been witnessed. But what was the truth behind Linda's journey? What had she endured in her personal life that had led her to that pivotal moment on the Britain's Got Talent stage? While Britain's Got Talent gave us a glimpse of Linda Mudzenda's voice, it gave us almost nothing about her life. The brief moments before her audition, and where contestants typically share a few personal details in front of the camera, were strikingly minimal in Linda's case. There was no emotional montage, no voiceover explaining where she came from or what she'd been through. Yet behind the scenes, Linda's story is layered with resilience, heartbreak, and an unyielding determination that would have made even the toughest critics pause in admiration. Born to Zimbabwean parents and raised in the UK, Linda's upbringing was shaped by cultural duality, a tug-of-war between her African roots and the expectations of British society. She didn't come from privilege, nor did she have access to elite music training or industry connections. What she had was grit. From a young age, Linda gravitated toward music as a form of survival, using singing to process trauma, stress, and the quiet pain of being overlooked. School was never easy. She was bullied for being different, and teachers rarely noticed her unless it was to discipline her. But in the corner of her room at night, she'd sing, not for an audience, but for herself, to remind herself she mattered. By the time she was in her 20s, Linda had been through more than many twice her age. Loss, financial hardship, and even bouts of depression tried to silence her. But the dream of sharing her voice never left. She worked jobs that barely paid enough to cover rent, saving whatever she could to invest in her music, buying cheap recording equipment, attending open mics, and traveling long distances just for a few minutes on stage. Her decision to audition for Britain's Got Talent wasn't just a whim. It was the result of years of building the courage to put herself forward in a world that had often made her feel invisible. When she walked onto that stage, she wasn't just performing. She was offering the judges and audience a piece of her soul. But the show didn't air that part. It didn't show the many nights she cried after being told she wasn't mainstream enough. It didn't show her parents' hesitation about her dreams. It didn't show her community rooting for her, praying she'd finally catch a break. What BGT didn't tell you is that Linda Mudzenda's performance wasn't the beginning of her story. It was the culmination of a journey filled with struggle, strength, and a voice long ignored. But what made Linda Mudzenda's journey even more remarkable was the unexpected turning point that propelled her into the spotlight. You won't believe the life-changing moment that almost led her to quit everything. Could this be the real reason she almost gave up on her dream? Just when she thought she was reaching her breaking point, an unthinkable twist would test Linda's resolve like never before. What happened next would force her to confront her greatest fear and set her on a path that would change everything, but not without sacrifice. What did she almost lose along the way? You'll have to keep watching to find out. While the final version of Linda Mudzenda's audition may have looked effortless and magical to those watching at home, what audiences didn't see was the whirlwind of stress, waiting, and emotional preparation that came before and after those few precious minutes on stage. Behind the scenes, Britain's Got Talent operates more like a high-stakes machine than a fairy tale showcase. Contestants like Linda are often herded through hours of waiting in crowded holding rooms, nerves mounting with every tick of the clock. For many performers, especially first-timers with no industry experience, the behind-the-scenes process can be overwhelming and disorienting. Linda arrived at the audition venue early that morning, and it would be well into the evening before her name was finally called. During that time, she sat surrounded by others, some practicing their acts out loud, others nervously pacing, while producers wandered around with clipboards, cameras, and carefully curated questions. These producers weren't just documenting the day, they were building a narrative, and in that process, some voices get highlighted, while others are deliberately downplayed. Linda wasn't the kind of contestant who fit neatly into one of the show's favored categories. She wasn't a quirky novelty act, a viral comedian, or a tragic backstory waiting to be exploited. She was simply a woman with a voice, and in the world of reality television, that can be a risky bet unless it's packaged with drama. As a result, she received minimal screen time leading into her performance. She wasn't filmed interacting with her family backstage or going through emotional interviews like other contestants. Her audition segment was clean, concise, and stripped of context, almost as if the show didn't quite know what to do with her. But what viewers didn't realize is that Linda poured her entire being into that performance. She had no stylist or vocal coach, no management team prepping her. Just herself, her nerves, and the raw talent that had carried her through life. After her audition, she was quietly led backstage, interviewed briefly, and then told she'd be contacted about the next round. There was no instant stardom moment, no fireworks. Just the heavy realization that she'd shared something deeply personal with the world, and now it was out of her hands. Britain's Got Talent chose to air her performance, but without the deeper emotional scaffolding that supported it. What they didn't show was the mental toll, the vulnerability, and the incredible composure Linda maintained through it all. She didn't just walk onto that stage and sing. She braved a world built to highlight spectacle and quietly, defiantly offered something real. As the cameras rolled and Linda stepped into the spotlight, the world saw only the polished, final performance, the culmination of everything that had led her to that moment. But what the audience didn't see was the true cost of getting to that stage. The immense pressure, the crushing loneliness of the waiting rooms, and the unsettling uncertainty of how she would be portrayed all weighed heavily on her. As Linda moved forward in the competition, the stakes only grew higher, and the behind-the-scenes drama began to take a more personal toll on her than anyone could have expected. But what happened next, after Linda's brief moment in the limelight, would lead her down a path that neither she nor the producers could have anticipated. What wasn't shown on camera was her internal battle with the reality of fame, the toll it would take on her relationships, and the dramatic choices she would have to make in order to protect her personal identity. The question now becomes, how long can Linda continue to stay true to herself in a world that thrives on spectacle? And as we look deeper into her journey, we uncover the real story of how Britain's Got Talent changed her life, for better or worse. Stay tuned, because what happens next will surprise you. The moment Linda Mudzenda's audition was broadcast, a ripple of emotion moved across social media. Her performance resonated on a level that transcended age, background, and even musical taste. While the show didn't give her a long introduction or a highly produced montage, audiences were still captivated by her sincerity. Within minutes of her performance airing, viewers began posting clips to TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Each platform filled with comments marveling at how powerful and real her voice sounded. One user wrote, "This is why I still watch BGT, for voices like hers." Another said, "I don't know who she is, but that woman just made me cry." Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of supportive messages poured in, many from people who felt seen through her performance. Some saw their own struggles reflected in her facial expressions, her nervous energy, and the way she stood tall in front of the judges despite being visibly overwhelmed. For many viewers, Linda didn't feel like a contestant. She felt like a messenger. She didn't need to belt impossibly high notes or use dramatic choreography. The quiet power of her voice did something most television performances don't. It made people stop and feel. And that's rare in a world of fast-paced content and attention spans measured in seconds. While the producers may not have realized the impact Linda would make, the audience certainly did. On Facebook, her audition was shared in private support groups for women of color, aspiring musicians, and immigrant communities, where people wrote long captions about how inspired they felt. Comments from Zimbabwean and African diaspora communities expressed a special pride, recognizing in Linda not just talent, but representation. One post read, "She stood there like our sister, our auntie, our friend. She sang for all of us." The most remarkable part was that Linda's impact didn't rely on any manufactured drama. There was no sob story clip, no manipulation of music or lighting, just her. That authenticity is precisely what made her stand out in a sea of reality TV performances designed more for virality than connection. Still, despite the buzz she generated, the mainstream media didn't run with her story. Her name didn't trend for days, and the official BGT accounts didn't push her audition the way they did for flashier acts. What BGT didn't show you is that sometimes the loudest applause isn't in the studio. It's in the homes of people who finally feel heard. Linda touched lives that night. Her performance may not have been packaged for a headline, but it struck a chord in the hearts of thousands, if not millions. And that kind of impact can't be manufactured, and it's earned. When Linda Mudzenda finished her performance, the audience was on its feet, and the judges' faces lit up with awe and admiration. At least that's what the cameras showed. But if you've followed Britain's Got Talent long enough, you know that what makes it to the broadcast is a heavily edited, highly curated version of events. While Linda did receive applause and compliments from the panel, including a gentle nod of approval from Simon Cowell and an emotional reaction from Amanda Holden, there was more going on beneath the surface. In the full, unedited judge commentary, which wasn't included in the televised version, the feedback wasn't just about Linda's voice. According to insiders and audience members who attended the live taping, some of the judges expressed uncertainty about how to market Linda, subtly suggesting she didn't fit into the usual mold of acts that go viral or draw headlines. There were allegedly comments about her not having a clear direction, a phrase often used when producers or executives aren't sure how to package someone for commercial success. Amanda Holden, visibly moved by Linda's raw delivery, was said to have spoken at greater length about how much potential she saw in Linda, calling her voice a reflection of life's pain and beauty all at once. But much of that praise was trimmed for time. Alicia Dixon reportedly offered a more personal connection, hinting that Linda reminded her of artists she grew up listening to, soul singers whose passion eclipsed Polish. Yet the edit we saw played it safe, leaving only a few seconds of positive feedback and none of the deeper emotional reactions. As for Simon Cowell, his comments were diplomatic. Some in the audience noticed he hesitated before pressing his buzzer of approval, leading to speculation that he was intrigued but unsure about how far Linda could go in a show that thrives on spectacle and commercial potential. In an interview days later, Simon was asked which act surprised him the most, and while he didn't name Linda, he cryptically referenced a few artists who had incredible voices but maybe didn't get the spotlight they deserved. What BGT didn't tell you is that the judges, especially those with producer influence, often weigh more than just talent. They consider marketability, social media potential, and the audience's reaction in real time. Linda's performance was breathtaking, but it didn't scream viral content. It whispered truth, and sometimes, in a room built for noise, a whisper goes unheard. Still, there's little doubt that behind the polite smiles and clipped compliments, Linda left a mark on the judges, one that perhaps challenged their expectations and even their own assumptions about what true star power looks like. After Linda Mudzenda's stirring performance on Britain's Got Talent, there was a noticeable silence where there should have been noise. For contestants who receive standing ovations and praise from the judges, especially those who go viral online, it's common to see a flurry of media coverage. Morning talk shows, online interviews, local newspapers picking up the story, and sometimes even entertainment magazines profiling the rising star. But for Linda, that kind of post-show spotlight never came. Her name briefly appeared in a few online roundups. 10 must-see auditions this week, or Britain's Got Talent's hidden gems. But there were no major features, no deep dives into her backstory, no invitations for post-audition press tours. It was as if her moment, while resonant for viewers, didn't meet the criteria for the media machine. And that raises the uncomfortable question. There are a few plausible answers, and most of them don't reflect well on how the entertainment world treats talent that doesn't fit a pre-packaged mold. First, Linda didn't have an easily marketable narrative. She wasn't a viral novelty, a child prodigy, or someone with an immediately dramatic sob story to headline. Her strength came from subtlety, soul, and lived experience, not sensationalism. Media outlets often prioritize stories they believe will get clicks and generate strong emotional reactions in headlines. In Linda's case, her story required more than a headline. It required listening. And unfortunately, that kind of story doesn't always make it into tabloid rotation. Second, there's the issue of industry bias. The uncomfortable reality that media and producers often gravitate toward contestants who look a certain way, speak a certain way, or come from specific kinds of narratives. Despite her incredible voice, Linda didn't conform to the polished pop star archetype. She wasn't quirky in a meme-worthy way, nor was she explosive on stage. She was real. And real doesn't always sell in a system that profits from spectacle. Some insiders suggest that performers like Linda often fall through the cracks unless they're aggressively promoted by the show itself. And since BGT gave her only minimal airtime and no behind-the-scenes features, the media followed suit. Lastly, there's the quiet possibility that Linda herself didn't chase the fame. Maybe she didn't push for interviews or hire a publicist. Maybe she chose to protect her peace after opening herself up on such a massive platform. But whether the silence was chosen, imposed, or simply overlooked, one thing is clear: the media missed a chance to highlight someone with not just talent, but integrity and authenticity. What Britain's Got Talent didn't tell you is that sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones the press never amplifies. Not because they aren't worth hearing, but because they can't be boxed into a clickbait narrative. When the lights dimmed and the Britain's Got Talent cameras stopped rolling, Linda Mudzenda didn't disappear. She simply returned to something far more grounded than fame. Unlike many contestants who chase the rush of media attention, relocate to London, or sign hasty contracts with hungry managers, Linda took a different path. She quietly returned to her community, to her normal life, and most importantly, to her purpose. For her, the stage had always been a means of expression, not an escape plan. In the months following her audition, she was seen performing at small events, local showcases, and cultural gatherings, places where connection mattered more than clout. She didn't boast about her television appearance. In fact, many who saw her live after the show had no idea she'd ever been on BGT. That's the kind of humility Linda carries. She didn't treat the stage as a springboard to celebrity, but as a sacred space where she had the honor of being heard. What's more telling is what she chose to focus on after the show. Linda began pouring more energy into mentoring young singers in her area, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds. She became a quiet but powerful presence in local creative circles, encouraging young artists to use their voices without compromising who they were. She talked openly about the pressures of the industry, about how hard it is to remain authentic in spaces that often reward performance.